Welcome to the Blue Ribbon Project. I'm Donald James, the host of the Blue Ribbon Project. And I'm here today with Dave Wicks, who is the District Superintendent for Eastern Suffolk BOCES. And I know a lot of my listeners won't have any idea what a BOCES is, a Board of Cooperative Educational Services, but I'm sure Dave will explain that as we go through the conversation today. So Dave, could you just, by the way, Dave is a CITE grad. He'll talk a little bit about that as we go through. Dave, could you just describe your role and what BOCES does and how CITE helped prepare you for that role?
Sure. So BOCES, Board of Cooperative Educational Services, as you said, Don. There are 37 of us throughout the state, 3 of us here on Long Island. So I'm the District Superintendent for Eastern Suffolk. There's also Western Suffolk BOCES, and Nassau County is represented by 1 BOCES. And so our job is really, as a BOCES, is to provide cooperative educational services to the 700 plus school districts in New York State. Most people that know of BOCES, when they hear that word, they think of our special education and career and technical education services that we provide directly to students. But Don, as you know, and in your time as superintendent, we do a heck of a lot more than that. We do a significant amount of professional development opportunities for teachers. We do a lot of back-end business services for teachers. We do a lot of technology acquisition for school districts directly. And really, our job is to provide services in an affordable and effective manner for school districts in a way that they might not be able to do on their own. So that's a really, that's a real general overview of what a BOCES provides to school districts. In addition to that, as the district superintendent, me and my 36 other colleagues are actually employed by 2 different entities. So I work directly for my board, as most superintendents do. But I also work directly for the State Education Department and the Commissioner of Education, to the point where part of my salary is paid by Eastern Suffolk BOCES and the other part is paid by the State Education Department. So with that part of my position, I'm expected to be the commissioner's representative in this region. And so, what that really entails is me bringing the commissioner and her leadership team, bringing their initiatives to the region and making it make sense for 51 school districts that range from, 15 students to 20,000 plus. And also bringing the concerns of those 51 school districts back to the commissioner and her team to say, look, this is what this means in the field. This is what this looks like in the field. And is there any way we can consider that when we're making policy or regulation or making decisions about that? So that's a real 30,000 foot view about what my role entails. It's leadership within the BOCES as well as leadership within the State Education Department. So how did CITE prepare me for that? So as you mentioned, I'm a graduate. I was a graduate cohort 10. I don't even know what cohort you're up to now.
67.
67.
Cohort 67, yeah.
That explains.
We're getting ready for 67, right?
That explains how gray my beard is right now. So I was a physics teacher. I was a high school physics teacher in a district on the very far east end of Long Island. And a colleague of mine both decided to get our administrative certification around the same time. At that point, there were other institutions that were doing local cohorts, either within the district or within the surrounding districts. So it would have been a lot easier than driving to Oceanside, from Wading River every Saturday. But we made a decision to go to CITE for a specific reason, because we wanted to give ourselves the experience of working with folks that we weren't used to working with. And it was the best decision that I ever made as far as preparing me to be a leader, especially in the role I'm in now. Because, I was working on the east end of Long Island. I grew up on the east end of Long Island, and I was attending a cohort where at least half of the students in the cohort were from the New York City Department of Education, and then everywhere in between. So it was just great to have that perspective. And just fast forwarding now to what I'm doing now, this state is so incredibly diverse, and I had didn't have a true idea what that meant until I started this position as district superintendent, and trying to understand how my colleagues in the North Country are doing the same work that I'm trying to do, but making it make sense for them. And the same for the greater Southern Tier and Western New York. We're a beautiful and diverse state. But I would say going through CITE and just working with folks that were having different experiences in the field of education than I was really helped with that. I'll add to that too, the fact that all of my professors, at least at the time, were practicing administrators, a lot of which were superintendents, really just brought it home. It was, we were hearing about how they were living, what they were trying to teach us every day. And that really helped. And also just the network that I built through that process. And,
sure.
And, having those kind of unofficial mentors that I stayed in touch with well past my graduation from the program. So I hope that answers the question, but yeah, it does.
So you mentioned your beard. So just, I'm going to sidetrack a little bit.
Sure.
Do you want to tell the audience what you're doing? I mean, so this will be a podcast and a video cast. So some people will be able to see your beard, which I think looks terrific. But you want to tell folks what you're doing tomorrow?
Sure. So Eastern Suffolk BOCES has for quite some time been associated with the St. Baldrick's Project. And so it was probably the second year that I started here. I committed to being part of that. So if you're not familiar with St. Baldrick's, you raise a certain amount of money and you agree to shave your head. And the money goes towards fighting children's cancer, childhood cancer, and research involved with that. We have a barbering program here. So one of our career and technical education programs is not only teaching kids how to become a barber, but certifying them to do that work when they leave us. And that's the program that really grabbed on to St. Baldrick's. So tomorrow I'll be going into one of our programs, and one of our students will be shaving everything you see on my head, to shave it off. And I must say that I also do that with my colleague Julie Lutz, who's our Chief Operating Officer. And I really am amazed at her commitment to do that, to do the same. She'll walk out looking with with as little hair as I will tomorrow, and we're able to raise, just the two of us, at least we're up to almost $3,000 for this year.
Wow.
And our BOCES before the pandemic, our BOCES was responsible for raising 30,000 plus.
That's terrific.
Yeah, but thanks for asking.
God bless you. Yeah, that's terrific. Yeah, and for those that a lot of places have St. Baldrick's, so you could always check with your local school district and see if they're running a program, and they'll happily shave your head.
Absolutely.
And it really is a sight to see. I've always been careful with that because, as you see, I'm holding on to the remnants of a once very proud empire. And now I'm afraid it won't grow back, but I like to make that yearly donation up, and we do it here in Comac as well. So thanks for sharing that, Dave.
Absolutely.
So Dave, can you just talk to us a little bit about how the field is changing as you see it, some of the challenges that people are facing, whether it's teacher shortages or things of that nature, changing curriculum, as well as some of the really positive things that you see out in the field?
Yeah, challenges for sure. I mean, I think it doesn't need to be said that the past 2 years have been extremely challenging for multiple reasons. So some of the challenges are just dealing with the unexpected. There's only so many things that you're going to learn in your administrative programs, how to react to, and so that's certainly been the case over the past 2 years, because in addition to a pandemic, we've had a period of social unrest, which has been unprecedented in multiple generations. So
yeah, sure.
Those are certainly the challenges. And, the fact that the politics behind some of those challenges are making it into our schools and our school board meetings more than we've ever seen. And you certainly could comment on that more than I could. That's a challenge. That's what a lot of people are struggling with. And that goes, that's down to the building level, because it's the building level folks that have to enforce the mask rules that everybody is or was, so upset about, or a lot of people were so upset about. So yeah, challenge, and that's, there are things every year something comes up that brings in some sort of concern that the community has and has differing views on, and that's our job as leaders, is to kind of to manage that and to really take in all that input and make decisions that are best for our students, that knowing that some people are going to be happy with it and some people are not. So certainly those are some of the challenges. Some of the more positive aspects, and I appreciate you asking this question, because it made me think, because there's been a lot of things that weren't positive over the past 2 years. But I have to say, I think, and I mentioned all the social unrest we've been dealing with since the spring of 2020, that's brought a lot of things to the forefront that weren't before. And I think all those things are centered around what students are we not serving in the best way that we can. And there are a lot of very deliberate conversations and planning that's going on behind just that very question. Who is succeeding in our schools and who is not? And I think that's the most positive thing, because it's become okay to talk about that. It's become okay to say, at least in some spaces, maybe we're not doing everything the way that we should be. And maybe we need to really investigate that and figure out, you know, not what the kids aren't doing right, but what are we not doing that could better serve the students that aren't succeeding to the degree that others are. So I think that's probably the most positive. And that's not just the social unrest part of it, but the pandemic brought that about, because when we shut down 2 years ago today, the state shut down 2 years ago today, you know, we quickly realized who was connected to the world in their houses and who wasn't. And, you know, the amount of packets that went home as opposed to the amount of students that were able to, you know, access virtual classrooms, that's a struggle. And that's something that has brought awareness right to the federal level of how do we do a better job of connecting our households so that this ever has to happen again. Or if we find a new way to deliver instruction that could be as effective, how do we make sure everybody has access to it? So I think that's, you know, the fact that we're recognizing that in a more formal and more direct way, I think is a positive for sure.
Yeah, I think you're right on the money there. It did cause us to pause and self-reflect, right? Because, you know, we settled into homeostasis for probably decades in public education and maybe in private and parochial as well. And so, but who weren't we serving? Right. And, you know, which kids were on the margins that needed support, whether it was socially, emotionally, or academically, or financially. And I think the pandemic really brought that to light.
Yeah.
And I do think we've made strides in that regard. I also think there were setbacks, but I think that, and we learned from those. And I think that's the benefit of having somebody like you who's reflective, and the folks over there, because I've known Julie for some time, and she's just, you know, terrific. And the work that you people do at BOCES, I don't know if I can sort of stress it enough how great it is, and the services that you provide. So the cooperative part is that school districts who can't necessarily, don't have necessarily enough need for one particular program, but certainly have students who need that support, they come together and BOCES provides that support. And it really is terrific. I was in Eastern Suffolk for a number of years, and I've always been impressed by the work. So Dave, we're getting close to the end of our conversation here today, although I think it'll be ongoing because yeah, we've reconnected and it's great talking to you. What advice would you give aspiring administrators today? Because there's a turnover, right? Whether we're talking about superintendents, and there's a huge turnover in superintendents, but the predictions are that 1 in 5 schools will have a new principal next year, which is a huge number of new principals. And we know that the teacher shortage is tremendous. It's already, I can't imagine it's not affecting BOCES, it's affecting everybody else, and managing that. So what advice would you give? So those are challenges, and I think that's part of the pendulum. It's not the first time we've been through a shortage as a educational system. It happened in the 70s and some in the 90s, and now here we are again. So what advice would you give, Dave?
I say follow your heart. I mean, I think one of the great things about programs like CITE, and I mentioned my colleague from my days in the East End before, you know, we both went through the same program. We both, you know, left there with our certifications. She went back to her work in the building, and by the following, you know, I left CITE in May, and by July I was an assistant principal in the same school building. So we found our hearts, we found our paths there. She decided the work she was doing as a counselor was where she needed to be. So I guess I say that because find your heart and follow it. So if your heart is in administration and leadership, don't let what's happening in the world scare you away from that, because we need you. Because as difficult as it is, and as tired as leaders have been over the past 2 years, so have teachers. I mean, it hasn't been easy for anybody. But the world of education needs people to lead with their hearts in those roles. So that's one thing I would say. Don't be scared by how difficult things may seem from the outside looking in. It's hard. It's all hard, but what you're doing now is hard. And I would also say, and I hit on this before, be prepared to be unprepared for the unexpected. Nobody, 2 years ago today, we went from being educational institutions to food delivery institutions overnight. And we all learned how to do that. And we rolled with it, and we figured it out, and we moved forward. And even though we would have been better off if it didn't happen, we're certainly better off. Even the fact that it did happen, we're better off because we were there to find solutions to those problems. So we need you. I mean, we need you, and we need you to develop, a positive outlook for education, so that we can get teachers to come in and fill in those roles that are lacking right now. That's a big thing that we're working on at a regional and state level, is how do we convince people to go back into teaching? It's a real problem, and shortages in teacher ranks lead to shortages everywhere else in the system. So we need that leadership. We need you to be on board, and I would just say don't be afraid of what's happening.
I couldn't agree more. And I think follow your heart. I mean, that's great advice. If your heart is to get involved in schools in a way that you can support students and teachers and parents and families, then this is the place for you. If the shortage and some of the challenges scare away some people, maybe that's not where their heart was. So, but I do agree that we should share more of the positive aspects, because I loved the work as a superintendent, and I was a building principal, and that opportunity to engage with people and support them, on a daily basis and be that in touch was just terrific. I can't thank you enough for taking the time, Dave, and for the work that you do, both at BOCES with our students there, but also at the state and being a voice for Long Island. You certainly make CITE extremely proud. And I thank you for taking the time to visit with me today.
And I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for reaching out.
Great. Thanks, Dave. We'll talk again soon. Bye now.
Take care. Bye-bye.
To keep up to date on everything CITE, please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at CITE Online. That's CITEONLINE. And you can follow us on LinkedIn as well. Till next time.